Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are absolutely strapping in for a wild ride. We're going to be unpacking a recent review of a chaotic, locked room thriller that starts out as this hilariously convoluted hospital nightmare, but actually ends up opening the door to a much deeper, far more serious conversation. So we'll start by looking at the absurd plot twists and the eccentric characters, and then we're going to pivot to a genuinely crucial sociological critique about how the media we consume actively shapes our reality. It's a super fascinating breakdown, so get comfortable.
Real quick, before we jump into the madness, just a quick reminder, the full audiobook of the source material we're looking at today is available right now through the link in the description. It's really the best way to experience the story firsthand, so definitely go check that out.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. 1. Welcome to Ward D. 2. A night shift gone wrong. 3. The chaotic climax. 4. The mentally ill villain trope. And 5. Real-world harm and stigma. Let's dive in. Welcome to Ward D. Let's meet the cast. To set the stage for this creepy, isolated, locked room thriller, our source material focuses on the book Ward D by Freida McFadden. Now, what's really interesting right off the bat, and the reviewer points this out immediately, is that McFadden is actually a practicing physician specializing in brain injury. That gives a really unique flavor to how the medical elements are presented throughout the story. We follow our protagonist, Amy. She's a third-year medical student who is just absolutely dreading her required overnight rotation in Ward D, which is the hospital's inpatient psychiatric facility. And to make matters worse, there is zero cell reception on the floor. Because, of course, there isn't.
So Amy walks right into what is essentially a powder keg, and the cast of characters here is incredibly eclectic. First, she finds out she has to work this grueling 12-hour shift alongside her ex-boyfriend Cameron. The reviewer actually drops some snarky advice here, saying Amy should just dump her stinky rat boyfriend right then and there. But anyway, then we meet the patients. You've got Spider-Dan, who legitimately believes he's Spider-Man. There's Mary, a 70-something woman who is inexplicably allowed to just walk around carrying knitting needles. You have Damon Sawyer, dubbed the super dangerous patient, locked in a seclusion room. And finally, in just a massive conflict of interest, there's Jade. Jade is Amy's childhood best friend, who was committed to the ward after trying to rob a bank.
Moving into Section 2, A Night Shift Gone Wrong. Chaos ensues.
I mean, the way things escalate during this night shift is just hilariously absurd. Let's walk through it. In hour 1, the power goes out. And why does it go out? Because a patient pees on a light socket, which somehow manages to short out the entire hospital floor's circuitry. By hour 2, the power is back, but the electronic locks on all the doors have reset, meaning absolutely everyone is trapped inside. Fast forward to hour 4, and Cameron mysteriously disappears, completely vanishing without triggering a single door alarm. And finally, around hour 6, Amy starts discovering the bodies. The hot attending doctor, the nurse, Cameron, they are all found dead inside the seclusion rooms. Now, right in the middle of all this high-stakes, locked room terror, the reviewer takes this completely deadpan, incredibly funny detour. While Amy is literally running around fearing for her life, the reviewer goes on a passionate tangent about her personal obsession with Smucker's Uncrustables. She recounts this whole saga of messaging the company on Instagram, declaring that the absolute best way to eat an Uncrustable is straight out of the freezer, like completely frozen solid. It is just the perfect comedic juxtaposition to the supposedly terrifying life-or-death events happening in the book.
Section 3, The Chaotic Climax. Let's look at this wild finale.
Okay, so it turns out the killer is Damon Sawyer, the dangerous patient we met earlier. And surprise, he actually happens to be dating Jade, Amy's childhood best friend. They trap Amy and go into that classic villain monologue where they lay out their overly complicated 3-step evil plan. Step 1, murder Amy and the fake nurse Nicole. Step 2, burn down the entire psychiatric unit. And Step 3, use that massive fire to fake their own deaths so they can run off and start a new life together. Oh, and the cherry on top of this whole thing, Jade casually reveals she had been secretly spiking Amy's peach iced tea for years with hallucinogens. That's what was causing Amy to see visions of a little girl in a pink dress telling her to do bad things. And then, just as Damon is about to attack Amy, the story resolves with this exact incredible moment. To quote the reviewer directly, Spider-Dan comes out of nowhere and shoots Damon in the face with a web made out of dental floss. Yes, you heard that right. Dental floss literally saves the day, subduing the killer just long enough until building management happens to casually stroll in to fix the broken door keypad and decides to call 911.
So it's ridiculous, it's campy, and it's definitely a bit funny. But right here is where the reviewer executes a really deliberate and important tonal pivot.
Because beneath all the snark and the absurd plot devices, there is a fundamental issue with stories like this. It forces us to take a step back and ask a serious question. Does Hollywood's and the publishing industry's portrayal of mental illness actually impact how we view real people in the real world?
Section 4. The mentally ill villain trope, and why it is a harmful trope. The reviewer's main argument here is that using mental illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder as a cheap, scary plot device isn't just a tired cliché, it is actively damaging, because media absolutely shapes our collective subconscious. The reviewer cites an article by Michaela Edwards from Ball State University, which states that it is frankly ignorant to assume cinematic or fictional depictions don't influence public perception. Think about it. If someone has never met a person with schizophrenia, their only frame of reference is what they see in horror movies and thrillers, and they tend to believe it. In fact, a 1983 study showed that students who watched the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest developed strongly negative attitudes toward individuals with schizophrenia. And incredibly, those negative perceptions did not waver even after the students were later shown far more positive and accurate representations.
Which brings us to Section 5, Real-World Harm and Stigma. Let's look at the actual cost of this stigma. It is absolutely crucial to break down the massive gap between these media myths and sociological reality. Fictional thrillers constantly hammer home the idea that conditions like schizophrenia make people inherently violent or unpredictable. But the actual research shows that most people with schizophrenia are not dangerous at all. Now, while there are statistics showing a correlation between mental illness and crime rates, the reviewer notes that researchers attribute this not to inherent violence, but to intersectional risk factors. People with heavily stigmatized mental illnesses often face profound poverty, homelessness, or substance abuse issues, and it's those systemic factors that elevate the risk of survival crimes, not the mental illness itself.
So, why does all this matter? What should you ultimately take away from this explainer? Well, it matters because this stigma actively ruins lives. The reviewer highlights a TED Talk from a woman living with schizophrenia who explained just how devastating this media-driven stigma really is. She shared that when she first started hearing voices and confided in her parents, their immediate reaction was to tell her to hide it, to not talk about it out of pure fear of how society would view her. When the media constantly tells the public that mental illness equals dangerous villain, it heavily deters real individuals who are struggling from seeking the help and treatment they so desperately need.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We all enjoy thrillers, we love a good plot twist, and sure, we can laugh at superhero moments involving dental floss. But if the fiction we consume genuinely shapes our reality, and in doing so harms vulnerable populations, isn't it time for creators to be just a bit more imaginative? Isn't it time to finally retire the mentally ill villain trope for good and find a brand new way to scare us? It's absolutely something every reader and viewer should keep in mind the very next time they pick up a locked room thriller.
Thank you so much for joining me today as we unpack this wild book and the very real, very important issues behind it. As a final reminder, the full audiobook of the source material is available right now through the link in the description. Be sure to check it out, keep learning, keep questioning what you read, and I will see you on the next explainer.